I'm Rob Chadwick. I work jointly for the Met Office and the University of Exeter, and I help lead the CSSP Brazil project. That's the Climate Science and Service Partnership between the Met Office, UK universities, and Brazilian scientists such as Liana. And the aims of CSSP Brazil are to look in more detail at climate change over Brazil and climate variability, how those are affecting natural disasters over Brazil, and how climate change in Brazil affects the rest of the world, including the UK.
Hello, I am Liana Anderson, and I am a scientist at SEMADA in Brazil, one of the 3 institutions involved in the CSSP Brazil.
Thank you. Lovely. It's lovely to meet you all. The first thing really I'm interested in is what is it that makes you so invested in this particular subject? And I know for me, I've got my granddaughter, and when I think about her future, it's just so important that we really think about all of this. But just what is it that really personally drives you on this? To Rob first.
Yes, I think climate change and the wider ecological crisis are one of the most important problems that we face as a society. So that's very motivating to work on that, although on the other side of the coin, it can be very frustrating when we see these problems, feel progress is not happening fast enough. And then for Brazil in particular, it's a fascinating part of the world to work on. You know, the Amazon rainforest is the biggest in the world, and it drives the water cycle of the whole of South America. So yeah, that's very interesting about this project.
Liana, what about yourself? What's your personal interest?
I think fires are the most emerging problem worldwide, especially if we think in the context of climate change. And all these fires have been affected, all these forests, all the natural ecosystems that I'm really passionate about. So I believe my research can help to guide with information, actions that we can do to mitigate the threat to our beautiful ecosystems.
So I mean that's lovely to hear your stories, and I guess my next question really would be around what is it that your projects are doing, and what are you hoping to find out?
So we're looking at 2 main things really. And the first is that Brazil is very, very vulnerable to weather-related natural hazards such as floods, fires, droughts, even landslides. And climate change is increasing the risk of many of those hazards. So we're trying to find out in more detail exactly how climate change is affecting weather over Brazil. And we're also thinking of practical ways in which we can adapt to that. So for example, we're producing improved forecasts of fire risk over Brazil, which Liana is very involved in, and also improved flood forecasts for Manaus, which is the biggest city in the Amazon region. Then the second big part of the project is looking at the huge amount of greenhouse gases that are stored in the ecosystem. Forests of Brazil store a huge amount of carbon, and the wetlands also store a huge amount of methane, which is also a potent greenhouse gas. And if these ecosystems are able to store less carbon in future, that will greatly exacerbate global warming and affect the climate of the whole world. So the kind of carbon budget of Brazil is something that we're trying to get to the bottom of.
That's very interesting. I mean, I'd love to know how in a bit, but yes, Liana, what about yourself?
So I'll talk specifically about the fire probability. Usually when you think about fires in Brazil, you relate it more with the response action. So the focus is on combating the fires once it has already started. And our research aims to provide these fire forecasts, which means that by knowing the probability of fires in the next few months and identifying priority areas, you can then focus in what you can do in terms of mitigation to avoid these fires to occur.
And what kind of things are your findings showing?
Well, I think one of the most striking observations we have so far is that fires are increasing earlier, before the dry season, which usually is the peak. So I think we have to start getting ready earlier And to combine this type of information, to translate this type of information to the general public is the current challenge we are facing.
And just on that, I mean, it's really, really interesting, and it's clearly so crucial that the work that you're doing. But what kind of things can you do if you recognise it starting earlier? What can you do to prevent the fires? Does your research, does it go that deep?
First, we have to think about what generate fires, and understanding the process are the key factor. In Brazil, fires can be used as a management tool. Fires are also used after the deforestation process. And because of these two, let's say, type of fires, you can have the forest fires. So in addition to all the, let's say, the meteorological conditions that can favor the spread, the intensity of fires, you have also to bring this type of information to understand the process, the causes, and by combining them, then I think you are able to provide a more certain guidelines for what's the root cause of the problem.
That's really interesting. I don't know whether you've got anything to add, Rob. I know we've only got a short amount of time, but I am really interested in terms of the research is identifying when those fires are starting, and I just wonder what therefore that enables you to do. Does it mean you can stop the fires from starting, which I imagine will be incredibly difficult, or does it mean that you can respond more readily when they do get started?
Amanda, I think ideally we would like to avoid the start of fire, because once it's settled, then it's very difficult to combat. So for example, if we think about last year, we had the major fires in the Brazilian Pantanal, in the wetlands. And it was during September, fires were more than 300% higher than the historical average. So we know that with these drier conditions, it will be very difficult to combat fires. So we really have to invest in mitigating. Robert, perhaps you want to complement.
Yeah, and just before Rob comes in, because I'm just thinking what that would look like. So how do you prevent a fire from starting?
First of all, we have to work with environmental education. So we have to be on the schools. We have to invest in the next generation, because these are the ones that will make a difference. The second thing, we have to be better organized as a government, looking at governance of fires, looking at command and control. And we also have to make the environmental laws work in Brazil, because by definition, most of the fires, they are illegal anyway. So let's say that we have the framework to avoid fires, but now we have to make it into practice.
So is my understanding, and Rob, sorry, it's just so interesting, and we'll bring you in, but is my understanding therefore that these fires are all started, but are not on purpose, but they are preventable? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and in a way to make it preventable, we have to invest in fire-free management tools. I think this is the first big thing, and there are many techniques that can be explored. And secondly, we have to stop deforestation.
Wow, Rob, sorry, anything to add on that? It's so interesting. It's like we're having a one-to-one conversation, Liana.
Yeah, no, don't worry at all. Liana's really the expert on the fire forecast, so that's absolutely fine. I think what I was going to add really is it's just interesting actually how climate change and deforestation interact with each other. And climate change, as temperatures get warmer, then that increases the risk of fire. But also, as we deforest the Amazon, that releases carbon into the atmosphere and exacerbates climate change. So deforestation and climate change are really closely linked, and we have to deal with both problems at the same time.
And presumably that's what the research is identifying then?
Yes, certainly part of it is finding out in a lot more detail exactly how much carbon is stored, for example, in the Amazon. And this helps to inform Brazilian government policy. For example, every country in the world, including the UK and Brazil, produce a carbon budget showing our sources of carbon emissions and what we're doing to combat that. So in Brazil, actually, the natural sources and the natural stores of carbon are a big part of that in their ecosystem. So our research here in showing how much carbon, how much methane is stored in the ecosystems of Brazil is feeding directly into government policy there.
Wow, and I know that at the beginning we were talking about that vested interest, and it's absolutely, it's really significant what you're doing, isn't it? I mean, it really is sort of life-changing, which must make you feel very flattered, very honoured to do it. I guess you love it, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. And there are one more piece of information that I think is interesting, because in addition to deforestation, our studies also have pointed that fires are a long-term contribution for climate change. For example, the forests affected by fires, they hold 25% less carbon than a pristine forest. And so we have like this double effect of deforestation and fires directly leading to a warmer climate.
Wow, so it's a double whammy really that you're talking about, it's a double hit. You know, I mean, I've got so many questions really, because it just sounds so incredibly interesting. And I'm just wondering, do you physically go to these places? How are you able to conduct your research? How do you do that?
Well, we used to before COVID, I think, is the answer to that. It's been very, very difficult actually. The last year, we haven't had many physical meetings. We have been able to continue the collaboration very well remotely, but it has been more difficult. I think the good thing about this project actually is that the collaboration between the UK and the Brazilian scientists means that in some senses we don't need to travel, because we can combine our expertise. So I'd say one example is that the UK has a very, very high expertise in global climate modelling. So as part of CSSP Brazil, we're producing some of the most state-of-the-art high-resolution climate simulations over Brazil. So we're able to bring that expertise to the table, and then what the Brazilian partners bring is a very clear knowledge of their local Brazilian climate, and also very strong observational records of the country, so we can compare our computer simulations against observations. I think it's definitely true that the whole of this project is greater than the sum of its parts because of that meshing of expertise between the UK and Brazil. And that's also helped us to overcome some of the challenges of not being able to physically meet during COVID.
And I'm also wondering really whether, I mean, obviously COVID's had a massive impact, you know, around the world, and this just depicts globally how that impact has really been felt. But I just wonder, again, I guess this is really for you, Liana, but do you feel as though your research is having an impact on the policymakers in Brazil? Are they taking on board what your findings are?
To some extent. For example, in Acre State, which is one of the southwestern Amazonian states, we have been working very closely with them. We have developed an online monitoring tool, which help to focus where fires are occurring and providing this guidance on like priority areas. But I believe that we still need to engage at the national level and to be using this information that we are generating.
And I'm just thinking, you know, COP26 is obviously coming up later this year, and one of the things, you know, we're thinking about is accelerating and inspiring action around the world. And I just wonder what action or impact you expect your research to have in the long term, because it's clearly going to be significant. So do you see a long-term impact for your research?
Absolutely. We have been working now in trying to achieve this national level, working closely with contacts with the civil defense, which is one of the main institutions which deals with natural disasters in Brazil. And I expect that by promoting the results of our work, by creating these online platforms where the information is visible to anyone that is interested on it, and the data is available for inspiring other scientists to use it, I think we will create the critical mass of people to use and to change the future of fires for Brazil.
And so does that online platform exist yet, or is that something that you're working towards?
We have one that is already working, and the one from CSSP, we really hope that by the end of the year it will be fully operational.
Yeah. And how will you encourage people to use that then?
We have been promoting a lot of capacity buildings, and I think just as other scientists around the world, we felt that we needed to be in the social media. So we are generating materials, videos, tutorials, and meeting with different parts of the government, state secretariats, and firefighters, and to show how to use, how you can combine this information. And we expect that with this novel piece of data, they will be able to act and think more about mitigating the risk of fires, rather just only thinking about combating or the response for once the fire has started.
Well, Liana, I think the work you're doing is incredible. It really is interesting to hear about it. What role do you think international partners have played in this? And has it been crucial to have international partners in this project?
Absolutely. I think, as Rob said, we are combining different levels of expertise. And I think this benefits scientists everywhere. In addition to get involved with the UK scientists, we have also engaged with some South American scientists in this process, because we are generating the fire probability for all South American protected areas. So I think we are all learning a lot with our different expertise.
Really interesting. Rob, I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that. It just sounds fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think the partnerships are crucial. I just wanted to add actually one thing which we haven't really talked about, which we is a big part of the project, is we're looking at how the water cycle over Brazil is changing, as well as fires. Okay. Brazil is quite vulnerable to flooding and to droughts, and also landslides can often be set off by extreme rainfall. And climate change, what we expect is that climate change will cause rainfall to fall in shorter, more intense bursts. So that, and when it does rain, we get heavier rainfall, but we'll also get longer gaps between rainfall, and therefore perhaps longer droughts or more intense droughts. So one part of the project is really, first of all, getting more detailed future climate projections of how the water cycle will change. And then secondly, trying to take some practical action to adapt to that. So one thing is that we've set up an improved river flood forecasting system for Manaus, which is in a city in the Amazon basin, which has huge seasonal changes in river level of several meters. You know, the amount of water that flows down that river is insane, really. So that you know, as well as kind of providing more detailed information about what climate change is doing to Brazilian climate, we're also trying to help take some practical action to mitigate the risks that brings. So
because of the climate change, you're finding that the way that the rain is occurring is changing then? So what does the future hold? What plans do you have for the future, Liana, on this? And you know, will you be impacting on all of our futures and my granddaughters? I mean, how far do you see this project extending?
Well, in terms of future, I think we have all the tools to provide the right information for decision making, but also for policy. So I would think that if we start being very wise in using the technical scientific evidence to guide major decisions, this would be a very important step for a more sustainable future for the entire planet.
And what would you say should be the single most important thing that we should all do?
Reduce our carbon emissions.
Right. yeah, no, absolutely. Is there anything else that I mean, this has been really fascinating, genuinely been an absolute pleasure to meet you. But is there anything else you think that I should know, or anything else you wanted to mention?
I just think with kind of COP26, the climate change conference coming up this year, I think that what I've found from this project is that the more we learn about climate change, the more frightening in a way it becomes actually. And the more crucial it is that we try and hit this 1.5 degree target. If we can keep global climate change below 1.5 degrees, we will avoid the most dangerous impacts of climate change. And I think COP26 is an absolutely crucial juncture for the governments of the world to come together and to do this. So I think that, from the climate science that I've seen, I think that COP26 just looks more and more important for the action and targets that will be agreed there.
And talking to you both, and obviously, I have a lot of these conversations, as I know that you will. And the really important first thing that we can all do is be aware of all the things that you're talking about, and we just all have a responsibility. So, Liana, thank you so much. It really has been I can't believe where the half hour's gone actually, but it's been an absolute pleasure to me. It's been lovely to see you, Bob, as well. Really, really lovely. Anything else before we go?
I just would like to thank for your time, Amanda, because I think this is a very important meeting for us scientists, and I hope that in the future they become more common.
No, it's been really lovely, so lovely. Maybe one day we can all get together. Would be good.